There was once a time when the goal was simple: make great games. And in the early 2010s, they did just that. The holiday season had players rushing to stores, finding shelves packed with AAA titles that promised hours of entertainment. Minecraft sparked creativity, DayZ redefined survival, and Rust took every encounter and made it personal. Developers listened, cared, and created. A few hundred players became millions, building worlds, forging alliances, and creating stories that lasted far beyond the screen. But today, those stories feel forgotten. Now, survival games tell a different story. One of broken promises, lost potential, and players left behind. Waves of cheating have taken over games like Escape from Tarkov. Ark suffocates its players with relentless microtransactions, and games like The Day Before break promises before players even log in. How did we end up here? Did developers lose sight of what made games worth playing? Or were we, the players, too forgiving, too willing to settle for less? And while the shelves may be empty today, a new chapter is waiting to be written. The question is, who will step up to make it happen? This is the fight to save survival games. From the success of Minecraft, DayZ, and Rust, there was a promise to do better. Escape from Tarkov, Ark, and The Day Before set out to shape the future, promising something greater. And for a while, it felt like they might succeed. Escape from Tarkov, developed by Battlestate Games, earned its reputation as a demanding and immersive extraction shooter. However, the game now struggles under the weight of rampant cheating, with players claiming the developers have largely turned a blind eye after initial ban wave efforts. Instead, they've introduced pay-to-win perks of the Unheard Edition for $250, charging extra for features that feel like they should have been included in the base game, all while cheating issues go unresolved. Escape from Tarkov's monetization is concerning, but it's nothing compared to what's happening in Ark Survival Evolved. Once a fan favorite for its open-world dinosaur survival, Ark offered a unique experience. But after Studio Wildcard was bought by Snail Games and started on Ark 2, pay-to-win tactics took over. Exclusive pets and DLCs became essential, forcing players to pay to stay competitive. Escape from Tarkov and Ark once lived up to the hype. The Day Before did not. The hype was once massive, so big that billboards for the game lit up in Times Square, and on launch day, 200,000 excited players bought in, only to find one big problem: the game was a scam. Rushed and thrown together with cheap Unreal Store assets, The Day Before was nowhere close to the groundbreaking survival game it advertised. It's a story that, sadly, has repeated itself in survival games for years. While Rust, DayZ, and Minecraft have their own controversies, they've always tried to keep their players happy. That effort shows through their sales and their dedicated player base. It might seem like this is only about survival games, but if you look at the bigger picture in 2025, it's clear the issue goes way beyond them. Instead of pushing boundaries, developers are just repackaging the same games. From Call of Duty, Battlefield, and Assassin's Creed, one by one, these game franchises have let players down. Everyone's following the same trends, and players have had enough. They're starting to ignore the games that just don't deliver. But who in the industry is actually listening? Well, believe it or not, it's a Rust player, someone with over 18,000 hours in the game. But this isn't just your average player. This is Alex Nichaporchik, the producer of Hello Neighbor, a game that's sold more than 30 million copies. His development team, Tiny Build Riga, saw creating a survival game as more than a business opportunity. It was a chance to challenge an industry that had grown too comfortable with playing it safe. His philosophy is simple: make great games. Put quality first, and you'll keep players, developers, and investors happy. This may sound like common sense, but it's a principle many studios have abandoned for rushed releases and profit-driven strategies, and now, many are paying the price. Tiny Build Riga and Alex weren't just looking to create a random game, they wanted a 1,000-hour experience, something that would keep players coming back again and again. To understand what he wanted to avoid, consider the content-driven approach of games like Call of Duty, specifically the Black Ops 6 campaign. It offers around 11 missions, each lasting about an hour. After those 11 hours, that's it. The experience is over. And building those missions, it's an expensive investment of time and money, and most players won't return to replay them. But games like Rust showed Tiny Build Riga a different approach. Rust is a systems-driven game. There is no set win condition. Success is defined by the players, and a different experience emerges every time it's played. A popular goal for Rust? Reaching the Tier 3 workbench, which unlocks all crafting in the game. But instead of grinding through missions, players find scrap and monuments scattered across the world, with each monument tied into other gameplay systems, creating layers of interaction that extend playtime. That's why even the CEO of a game company can sink 18,000 hours into Rust and still find new things to do. For developers, this approach means they can continuously refine their work instead of throwing it away for new content. For players, they get to enjoy a more rewarding play experience. And finally, investors see more engagement, creating opportunities for less intrusive monetization. This approach is why games like Minecraft, Rust, and DayZ remain popular years after their release. If Tiny Build Riga was right, this vision could redefine what games could be for years to come. But if they're wrong, it would be an expensive lesson on the risk of thinking big. So, would players really commit 1,000 hours to this new survival game? In January of 2024, Tiny Build Riga set out to create their new survival game. They started with modding Rust, just like how DayZ and PUBG began as ARMA mods. Tiny Build Riga wasn't just looking to simply copy other survival games, they wanted to push the genre forward. Consider DayZ, often mocked as a running simulator, where players painfully spend an hour and a half of real time just across the map. And then there was Rust, where roof camping had become a common strategy, with players building towers to snipe new players from a distance. For most players, these were annoying, but accepted as a part of the survival game experience. Tiny Build Riga set out to fix that. Their idea was a Waterworld survival game, where players start on an island and gradually build a tugboat as the island around them floods. The tugboat and its upgrades were critical to survival, forcing players to keep moving. The flooding would cut down on endless running, and moving bases would help prevent roof camping. But a big question came up. What if new players joined after the world was already underwater? Many developers would have scrapped the idea, but Tiny Build kept pushing. Then inspiration struck. What if players could fly? Flying solved both issues. Players didn't need to run, and they could move quickly, and roof camping was no longer a threat. This also inspired the choice of a duck as their main character. With experience as publishers of DayZ, a survival game by Bad Pixel, Tiny Build had the technical foundation they needed. They swapped Dead for Duck to create Duckside, reaching a playable game in just 6 months, a timeline far faster than the industry standard. On April 1st of 2024, IGN ran a video titled, "A Rust-like game where you play as a duck," leaving people wondering if it was real or an April Fool's joke. Curious players flocked to Steam to find out. Duckside was indeed real. With 150,000 players registered for a playtest, Tiny Build braced themselves. This was it. Months of development would all come down to this one test. But as everyone joined, the servers struggled. Tiny Build had realized they had forgotten a key feature, a decay system, to prevent the server from being overloaded by player structures, something that is common in games like Rust. To make matters worse, Tiny Build didn't have the tools to manually clear out these structures. They could have delayed the playtest or scaled it back. Instead, they took the risk. On launch night, they encouraged players to raid and clear unused bases, with hopes of keeping the servers up. The community was supportive, and clans even formed to get the job done. And thanks to the community's efforts, the playtest continued. By the next day, the decay system was patched in, and Duckside had survived its first major test, and had been downloaded by nearly 300,000 players by the end of the beta. Even Rust creators like Blueprint, HJune, and Slef were impressed by Duckside, calling it a real answer to problems in survival games. But survival for a game isn't just about how you start, it's about whether you can last. And for Tiny Build Riga, the real fight was just beginning. On September 25th of 2024, Duckside launched in early access, met with positive reviews on Steam, and a wave of support from players. And not long after, a dedicated player hit 1,000 hours of playtime in Duckside. But launching a game into early access is one thing, keeping it alive is another. For many, this is where the struggle ends. Developing games has never been easy, and in 2025, it's harder than ever. Players have more options than ever before, and less trust in the industry that seems to be against them. Established games like Rust, DayZ, and Minecraft have spent years refining their formulas, making it tough for new games to stand out, let alone survive. Duckside is no exception. Like many early access survival games, it has faced cheaters, pay-to-win concerns, and launch setbacks. Some players have moved on, looking for the next big thing. So, can Duckside turn things around? Well, it's easy to release a game. It's much harder to keep it alive. Tiny Build Riga has had plenty of reasons to walk away. From a rough launch to community backlash, every challenge could have been an excuse to move on to the next project. But instead, they've kept pushing forward, and actions speak louder than words. When players pushed back against pay-to-win concerns, Tiny Build listened. When cheating became a problem, and players felt locked out of modding and private servers, they started finding solutions to cheating, alongside the goal to give players control in server modding. Look at DayZ, a survival game Tiny Build and Bad Pixel published in 2020. It could have been abandoned like so many others, but instead, after 4 years of steady development, it finally left early access, bringing back players who had once moved on. Tiny Build didn't have to do that, and most major studios wouldn't. Why? Because it's easy to make a quick profit. It's much harder to make a great game. And great games, they only survive if players keep playing. So why does this team keep fighting for Duckside? Because they know what it's like to watch great ideas die. For years, these developers have worked on projects that were abandoned before they ever had a chance. They've seen games they've poured their passion into get shelved, forgotten, or never fully realized. So when they finally get a chance to finish something, to prove a game is worth fighting for, how could they walk away? Alex Nichaporchik, the producer of Hello Neighbor and the CEO of Tiny Build, has been here before, but taking a risk doesn't mean avoiding failure. It means learning from it.
The bigger goal is how can we inspire more players and developers to develop things within this, the confines or the rules of the genre, or break those rules, right? Don't be afraid of pain. Your players need to experience pain. I know how terrible that sounds, because in contrast, when they feel joy, when they succeed in the game, they will be much more happy if they hadn't felt that pain. And I feel like it's just so important to not be afraid to create tense situations for players, to not be intimidated by some community members that might just want it to be much easier or this and that.
For players who took a chance on Duckside, the journey isn't about surviving in-game. It's about whether the game itself will survive. The question isn't just, what will Tiny Build do next? It's whether players will return to see it. It's about what players demand from the games they love. Duckside's future won't be decided by a sale. Sure, it's 35% off, but will players return? Will developers listen? Time will tell. But one thing is certain, the next 1,000 hours are yours. What will you do with them? Hey guys, Jack Shepard here. Thanks for watching. Click this video next if you enjoyed this video, and please do not forget to subscribe if you like my content. Until the next video, cheers!